My sister's tantrum over an $8,000 dress backfired. Now she's crawling back. Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be posting here, but I guess life has a way of proving me wrong. Have you ever done everything for someone, thinking you're helping them, only to realize you've just created a monster? Because yeah, that's where I'm at. For context, I'm Olivia, 36, and my younger sister, Mia, 25, is the star of this mess. She and I have an 11-year age gap, which means we grew up in two completely different worlds. My parents had me young, barely 20, so they were still figuring life out. By the time Mia came along, they were well established, making great money, and having all the time in the world to spoil her. And trust me, she was spoiled rotten. Not just by my parents, though. I was part of the prob, too. By the time she could throw a tantrum, I was already a teenager, and instead of being the mature older sister who put her in her place, I became her biggest enabler. I defended her when she got in trouble, I covered for her when she messed up, and I convinced my parents to let her do things she probably shouldn't have. When she said she wanted to be an actress, my parents weren't thrilled. They wanted her to be practical, to choose a real career. But I fought for her. I argued with them and convinced them to let her go to film school. I was always in her corner. And then she got engaged. I was so excited for her. The moment her boyfriend proposed, she called me first, and I threw myself into helping her plan her wedding. We spent weeks picking venues, choosing themes, and making endless Pinterest boards. I was visiting her every weekend, helping with every little thing. And since our parents were covering most of the wedding and her fiancé's family had money too, she didn't have to worry about expenses. At one point, I casually told her I'd pay for her wedding dress as my gift. I wasn't thinking of anything extravagant. I had a friend who owned a bridal boutique, and she had already offered me a huge discount. In my mind, it was a win-win. Mia would get a stunning dress. I'd be giving her something meaningful, and everyone would be happy. But I underestimated just how deep her entitlement ran. A few days later, I get a text from her. No explanation, just a link. I click on it, expecting a normal wedding dress. It was an $8,000 designer gown. Now, here's the thing. I could afford it. That wasn't the issue. The problem was that I had already been planning something huge for her. For years, Mia had talked about wanting to do a Europe honeymoon tour, hopping from country to country, staying in gorgeous hotels, living out her movie star fantasy. So, as a surprise, I had been secretly planning and paying for that. Flights, hotels, fancy dinners, private tours, everything she dreamed of. And between all of that, I was already spending way more than $8,000. So, I told her no. I explained it as gently as possible. I told her about my friend's boutique and how we could get her a custom dress that looked just like the designer one for a fraction of the price. But she wasn't having it. She refused to consider anything else. Said she needed the designer label, that it had to be that exact dress, and nothing else would do. I stood my ground. The conversation ended with her sulking. She barely said goodbye when I left, but I figured she just needed time to cool off. I assumed she'd get over it and call me in a few days, and we'd laugh about it later. I was so wrong. The next day, silence. A few days passed, still nothing. By the end of the week, I realized she was completely ignoring me. At first, I thought maybe she was just overwhelmed with wedding stress. But after a week of radio silence, I started considering just telling her about the honeymoon. Maybe if she knew why I didn't want to spend that kind of money on a dress, she'd understand. Before I could do that, she called me first. For a brief moment, I thought, okay, maybe she's calling to apologize. Maybe she realized how ridiculous she was being, and she just needed time to process. I was so wrong. Because the moment I picked up, she didn't apologize. She didn't even try to make amends. She demanded to know why I was being such a miser. She went off about how I had so much money and no husband or kids to spend it on. So what was I even doing with it? And that hit me hard. Because here's the thing. I chose to be single. I chose not to have kids. I never wanted a traditional life, and I was fine with that. But you would not believe how many people love to comment on it like it's some sort of failure on my part. But my sister, using it against me, I was speechless. She kept going. She said that by refusing to buy her the dress, I was jealous that she was getting married while I was pushing 40 and still alone. That's when I hung up. I had never been so genuinely disgusted by her in my life. For the first time, I didn't feel like her big sister. I didn't feel like someone who had spent years looking out for her. I just felt like an idiot. And honestly, that was only the beginning. The moment I hung up, I just sat there, staring at my phone like it had personally offended me. I kept replaying her words in my head, trying to wrap my mind around the absolute audacity of it all. This wasn't some petty sibling argument. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Mia had deliberately taken the most personal, vulnerable part of my life and used it as a weapon because I wouldn't drop 8 grand on a dress. And the worst part? It worked. I hated to admit it, but it got to me. Not because I was ashamed of my life choices, I had made them for a reason, but because it showed me exactly how my sister saw me. To her, I wasn't the person who had always defended her, fought for her, and made sacrifices to support her dreams. I was just the pathetic older sister with no husband, no kids, and nothing better to do with my money. I should have let it go. I should have just blocked her number and moved on. Instead, I did something stupid. I called my mom. At first, I wasn't even planning to bring up the fight. I just wanted to hear her voice, to have some kind of normal conversation to remind myself that I wasn't the crazy one. But the second she picked up, she sighed like she had been expecting my call. "I know, sweetie," she said before I could even get a word out. "Mia's upset." "Oh, is she? That must be so hard for her." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Did she tell you what she said to me?" Silence. That was all the answer I needed. She called me a miserable, jealous old hag because I wouldn't buy her an $8,000 dress. I snapped. "Did she mention that part?" My mom hesitated. "She's just stressed. You know how she gets." Oh, I knew how she got. I knew that Mia had spent her entire life throwing tantrums until she got what she wanted. I knew that no matter how awful she acted, she could always count on someone making excuses for her. I had been that person for years. Not anymore. "Mom, she's 25, not 5, I said. "She doesn't get to treat people like garbage just because she's stressed." Another pause. Then, the classic parental guilt trip. "Olivia, do you want to fight with your sister over something like this?" I laughed. Like, full-on laughed out loud. "This isn't about the dress," I said. "It's about the fact that Mia doesn't respect me. She thinks I owe her whatever she wants just because I don't have a husband or kids taking up my money." More silence. And then my mom said the one thing I wasn't expecting. "Well, she's not exactly wrong." I felt my stomach drop. "Excuse me. I just mean, you do have more freedom, financially speaking," she said carefully. "Mia's starting a new life. This is a big moment for her. Maybe you should just let this one go." I don't know what was worse, the fact that she said it or the fact that she genuinely thought it was reasonable. For years, I had assumed my parents saw Mia and me as equals, that they loved us both the same, even if Mia was a little more demanding. But at that moment, I finally understood. They saw me as less important, not because I wasn't successful, not because I wasn't financially independent, but because I wasn't married, because I wasn't popping out grandkids. To them, my life was just extra, a nice little side story, a fun bonus, but not as real or important as Mia's. I didn't even bother arguing. What was the point? Instead, I just said, "I have to go," and hung up. And then I cried. Not a cute, single tear down the cheek cry. An ugly cry. Because no matter how old you get, no matter how strong you think you are, there's something about realizing your own family doesn't see you as an equal that just breaks you. I wish I could say that was the moment I cut them off, that I wiped my hands clean and walked away. But I didn't. I still wanted to believe that Mia would come around, that she'd realize she was wrong and apologize. But weeks passed, then months, and not only did she never reach out, she didn't invite me to the wedding. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake, that my invitation had just gotten lost in the mail or something. But then I started hearing from relatives. "Oh, Mia's wedding invitations just arrived. Have you gotten yours yet?" I hadn't. She had invited everyone in the family except me. That was when it finally sank in. She wasn't planning to make up with me. She wasn't planning to talk to me ever again. I was dead to her. And honestly, it should have devastated me. But mostly, I just felt stupid. Stupid for thinking she would ever change. Stupid for letting it hurt me. But I was done crying over it. I was done waiting for an apology that was never coming. And I was done being the sister who always gave more than she got. Mia had made it crystal clear where I stood in her life. So I made a decision. I blocked her on everything. I told myself that was the end of it. That I would move on, focus on my own life, and stop letting my family treat me like an afterthought. And for a while, I thought it was over. Until one night, over dinner, my parents accidentally blew everything up. For a couple of months, things were quiet. I threw myself into work, started going out more, and did my best to just move on from all the nonsense. Mia was out of my life, and honestly, it was a relief. No more entitled demands. No more guilt trips. No more feeling like I was just a walking ATM for my family. Then, one night, my parents accidentally shattered my peace. It happened over dinner. Nothing fancy, just a casual meet-up at a restaurant. I hadn't seen them in a while, and despite everything, I still wanted to have a relationship with them. Big mistake. At first, it was fine. My mom was rambling about some new hobby she picked up. My dad was half listening, and I was just enjoying my wine. Then, completely out of nowhere, my mom dropped a bombshell. "I still don't understand why you couldn't just let the dress thing go," she sighed. I froze. I had not brought up Mia at all. I had gone out of my way to keep the conversation light, and yet here we were. I put my glass down. "Excuse me." She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "It just seems silly now, doesn't it? Fighting over a dress. You missed her wedding over something so small." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. Because surely she wasn't blaming me for this. I wasn't the one who went no contact. I wasn't the one who uninvited my sister for my wedding. I wasn't the one who turned a stupid argument into a full-blown family divide. But the way my mom was looking at me, she genuinely thought this was my fault. I glanced at my dad, waiting for him to step in. He just sighed and shrugged, like this whole situation was so exhausting for him. That's when it hit me. They hadn't just sided with Mia, they had rewritten history in their heads. To them, I was the villain. I was the selfish, bitter older sister who had picked a fight over nothing, who had refused to let things go, who had ruined my relationship with Mia all on my own. I could have just ignored it, could have let it go. But I was so damn tired of being the one who had to keep the peace. So I leaned back in my chair and smiled. "You know," I said, "I was going to surprise her with a honeymoon across Europe." Silence. Dead. Absolute silence. Both of them just stared at me. My mom blinked first. "What?" I shrugged, swirling my wine. "That's why I didn't want to spend $8,000 on a dress," I said casually. "Because I was already paying for her dream honeymoon. Flights, hotels, everything. I had it all planned out." I took a slow sip of my wine, watching the realization hit them like a truck. My dad looked genuinely stunned. My mom gasped. "You never told us that," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, "because it was supposed to be a surprise." She covered her mouth with her hand. Oh my God. I let that sink in for a few seconds. Then, just because I could, I twisted the knife a little deeper. "She threw me away over a dress," I said. "And because of that, she lost something so much better." The table was completely silent after that. I wasn't trying to be petty. I wasn't trying to make them feel bad. Okay, maybe I was. Just a little. Because I had spent months feeling like garbage over this. I had spent months blaming myself, wondering if I was the problem. But now, I could see exactly who was in the wrong. And for the first time, so could they. I could tell they wanted to argue, to defend Mia. But what could they even say? They had spent weeks defending her, making excuses, telling me I was in the wrong, and now they knew the truth. She hadn't cut me off because she was hurt. She had cut me off because she was entitled, because she thought she could punish me into doing what she wanted. And now, she had nothing. I expected my mom to try and guilt-trip me, to say something like, "You should still talk to her," or "She's your sister, you need to fix this." But she didn't. She just sat there, looking completely lost. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Well," he said awkwardly, "that's unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" I laughed. "Yeah, Dad, it is." I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I had wasted enough time feeling bad over someone who never deserved my kindness in the first place. I wasn't going to grovel. I wasn't going to chase after her. I was going to live my life. And that's exactly what I did. I booked the Europe trip for myself. I figured, if I had already planned and paid for it, why let it go to waste? I invited my best friend, packed my bags, and 3 days later, I was on a plane to France. And let me tell you, that was the best decision I ever made. The moment the plane took off, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Like I had finally cut the last thread tying me to all the drama. No more guilt. No more wondering if I should have handled things differently. No more waiting for an apology that was never coming. It was just me, my best friend, and a 6-week tour of Europe that was supposed to be for my spoiled little sister. And honestly, I was going to enjoy every second of it. The first few days were incredible. We landed in Paris, checked into a gorgeous boutique hotel, and spent our days sightseeing, eating, and drinking our way through the city. I made a point to document everything, posting pictures of fancy dinners, stunning views, and all the things Mia had wanted for her honeymoon. Petty? Maybe. But after everything she pulled, I earned this. I had no idea how long it would take for word to get back to her. I didn't actively have anyone from her circle on my social media, but I wasn't exactly hidden, either. And Mia? She loved keeping tabs on everyone. It took less than a week before she found out. I was sitting in a little cafe in Rome, enjoying a cappuccino, when my phone started blowing up. Calls, texts, voicemails. From my mother. I sighed, staring at the screen, debating whether to answer. My friend, sensing my hesitation, raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. The queen has discovered you took her throne." I snorted. Probably. After letting the calls go to voicemail, I finally gave in and checked the messages. Sure enough, my mother had completely lost it. Mom, Olivia, please call me. It's important. Mom, Mia saw your posts. She's devastated. Mom, Olivia, she's been crying for hours. You've hurt her. Mom, I understand why you're upset, but this is too much. You're her sister. I laughed out loud. She ignored me for months, cut me off, treated me like I was nothing, and now I was the bad guy because she found out I was enjoying my life? I sent a single reply. Me. So now she wants to talk to me? Not when she uninvited me from her wedding. Not when she called me pathetic. But now? When she realizes she threw away a free honeymoon? Interesting. I muted my phone and went back to my cappuccino. Because you know what? I was done. For years, I had let my family guilt me into everything. Every argument, every disagreement, I was always the one expected to be the bigger person. Not this time. Not when I had done nothing wrong. For the next few days, I ignored every single attempt at contact. My parents, my aunts, and even a couple of family friends started reaching out, all feeding me the same lines. She's your sister. Family is family. You should fix this before it's too late. Too late for what? I wasn't the one who cut her out. I wasn't the one who uninvited her for my wedding over a dress. I wasn't the one who used my life choices as a way to humiliate her. Mia had made her choice. And so had I. But just when I thought the drama was over, she took things to a whole new level. One morning, while in Venice, I woke up to a call from a random number. I ignored it, but then another came in. And another. Then, a voicemail. I rolled over in bed, pressed play, and immediately heard a voice I hadn't expected. Mia's husband. Well, this should be interesting. I put the phone on speaker, and my friend sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes. Oh boy. What now? The voicemail started normal enough, if you consider an entitled tantrum normal. Olivia, this is David. I just want to say that what you're doing is messed up. Mia is beside herself. She didn't invite you to the wedding because she thought you hated her, not because she didn't want you there. She was heartbroken, and now she sees you parading around Europe, rubbing it in her face. He sighed dramatically as if this was physically painful for him. Look, I know you two have your issues, but Mia loves you. She made a mistake. But what are you redoing? This is just cruel. Are you going to let this break your family apart over a dress? What kind of person does that? By the time the message ended, I was grinning. Because this wasn't about the dress. It was never about the dress. This was about control. Mia had spent her whole life getting whatever she wanted. And when that didn't happen, she threw a tantrum until someone caved. She had assumed she could do the same thing with me. But this time, it backfired. I had walked away first, and she had never expected that. And now, instead of feeling like she had won the fight, she was sitting in her fancy new house, seething with regret. I could have texted back. I could have sent a long, detailed response explaining that Mia was not the victim here. Instead, I did something better. I sent David a single picture of me holding a glass of champagne in Santorini. No words. No explanation. Just cheers. Then, I blocked his number and went back to enjoying my vacation. Because I had wasted enough of my life on my sister's entitlement. I wish I could say that was the end of it. After I sent the champagne picture, Mia and her husband took the hint and backed off. But nope. Instead, she did something much worse. I was in Mykonos when I got the message from my cousin. It was a screenshot from Facebook with a single caption. You're not gonna believe this. And oh boy, she was right. Mia had posted a massive, drama-filled Facebook rant about how I had betrayed her. Family is supposed to support each other. I never imagined that my sister would do something so cruel, but I guess money changes people. Some people would rather spend thousands of dollars on a vacation than be there for their flesh and blood. It's honestly disgusting. I hope she enjoys her trip because she'll be doing it alone for the rest of her life. I burst out laughing. Because what on earth? She had spent months ignoring me. She had called me bitter and pathetic. She had uninvited me from her wedding. And now? She was trying to play the victim because I was enjoying my vacation? I showed my friend the post, and he just shook his head. She's spiraling. He wasn't wrong. The comments section was a dumpster fire. Her friends, who had no idea what had happened, were all chiming in with sympathy. OMG, I can't believe she would do that to you. I always got bad vibes from her. You're better off without her, babe. This is so disgusting. I'd cut her off completely. Then, buried in the middle of all the blind support, I saw a single comment from our aunt. I think there's more to this story, Mia. Maybe you should tell everyone why Olivia didn't buy the dress in the first place. And just like that, Mia deleted the post. Poof. Gone. But the damage was done. The fact that she even tried to pull a stunt like that showed me exactly how desperate she was. She thought she could turn our family against me. Thought she could manipulate the narrative just like she always did. But this time, she failed. I didn't even bother responding. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I didn't even acknowledge what she had done. Instead, I ordered another drink, sat back in my chair, and let Mia's tantrum burn itself out. Because I was done playing her games. But just when I thought she couldn't possibly sink any lower, she did something that shocked even me. 3 days later, I woke up to a frantic voicemail from my mom. Not her usual guilt-tripping. Not the standard, you need to make peace nonsense. She sounded panicked. Olivia, I don't know what's happening, but you need to call me back right now. Mia, she did something stupid. My stomach dropped. Because no matter how much I resented my sister, no matter how selfish and manipulative she was still my sister. And for the first time since this all started, I felt genuine fear. I called my mom back immediately. She answered on the first ring. Mom, what's going on? She took a deep, shaky breath. Mia tried to mess with your job. I froze. My job? She called your office, my mom said quietly. She told them you've been stealing money. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She what? She made up some story about how you were embezzling funds, my mom admitted. Tried to convince them to do an internal investigation. I had to sit down. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just petty drama anymore. This wasn't just some ridiculous family fight over a dress. She had actively tried to ruin my career. My actual livelihood. Why would she do that? I finally managed to say. My mom hesitated. Then, in a voice so soft I almost didn't hear it, she admitted. She said if you could ruin her honeymoon, she could ruin your life. I felt sick. Because there it was. The real reason. This wasn't about a dress. It wasn't about money. It was about control. Mia had always been able to manipulate people. To throw tantrums until she got what she wanted. To make everything about her. And when I didn't cave, when did I refuse to play my role? She decided to destroy me instead. What she didn't know, though, I had receipts. I don't even know how long I sat there, staring at my phone, trying to process what my mom had just told me. Mia had deliberately tried to sabotage my career. Not because I did anything to her. Not because I wronged her in some way. But because I didn't give her what she wanted. Because I refused to be manipulated. At that moment, did I have any lingering guilt? Any part of me that still thought, maybe I should try to fix this? Gone. I took a deep breath, pushed down the anger threatening to bubble over, and asked the one question that mattered. What did my office say? My mom hesitated. Well, they didn't believe her. A rush of relief flooded through me. She tried to sound convincing, my mom continued. Said she had proof that you were misusing funds, that you had access to company accounts, and that they needed to investigate you immediately. I almost laughed. And they believed her? Of course not, my mom admitted. The second they asked her for actual proof, she started fumbling and making excuses. It didn't take long for them to realize she was just making things up. I let out a slow breath. So, Mia had failed. She had tried to ruin my career, to make me look like some sort of fraud, and instead, she had embarrassed herself. But that wasn't enough for me. She had crossed a line. This wasn't just some spoiled tantrum anymore. This wasn't about a wedding dress or a vacation or family drama. This was about her actively trying to destroy my life. And I wasn't about to just let that go. So I called my lawyer. Now, to be clear, I wasn't looking to start a full-blown legal battle. I wasn't going to take her to court or drag our family into something messy. But I wanted to know what my options were. And oh, did I have options? Turns out that falsely accusing someone of financial misconduct, especially in a professional setting, can have some serious consequences. Even though my office didn't believe her, the fact that she attempted to make those claims could still be seen as defamation. I had the right to send her a legal notice, to demand a formal retraction, to let her know, in no uncertain terms, that if she ever tried something like this again, she would be facing real consequences. I took a couple of days to think about it, not because I was second-guessing myself, but because I wanted to be sure that I was ready to take this step. Because once I did, there was no going back. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized. I was already done with Mia. There was nothing left to salvage. She had shown me exactly who she was, and I believed her. So, I had my lawyer draft up a formal cease and desist letter. It wasn't a lawsuit. It wasn't some aggressive attack. It was a simple, clear message. Try this again, and you'll regret it. I had it sent directly to her address. And then I waited. It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. Less than 24 hours after the letter was delivered, my phone exploded with calls and texts from my parents, from relatives, even from a couple of her friends. Mom, Olivia, what did you do? Dad, we need to talk. Now. Random cousin, OMG, did you send her a legal notice? What is happening? I ignored every single one. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I had spent my entire life bending over backward for Mia, for my family, and for people who expected me to just take whatever was thrown at me. Not anymore. This time, she was the one facing the consequences. Based on the absolute meltdown happening in my inbox, she wasn't handling it well. But honestly, that wasn't my problem anymore. I had wasted enough of my life on Mia's drama. I was going to enjoy the rest of my trip, focus on myself, and leave my sister exactly where she belonged, in the past. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't holding my breath, expecting another guilt trip or another attempt at manipulation. I had taken control of the situation. And more importantly, I had taken control of my own life. Mia had finally learned that there were limits to how far she could push me. And based on the radio silence I was getting from her, I had a feeling she wasn't used to being told no in a way that meant something. Of course, my parents were still desperately trying to fix things. After ignoring my calls for days, I finally gave in and picked up when my mom called again. The second I said hello, she let out a dramatic sigh. "Olivia, this has gone too far." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. "Has it?" "She's your sister," my mom said, as if that excused everything. "You didn't have to get lawyers involved. She didn't have to try to sabotage my job." I shot back. Silence. Then my mom did what she always did, made excuses. She wasn't thinking straight, she insisted. She's been under so much pressure. She's newly married. She's trying to adjust. I cut her off. "Mom, do you hear yourself? She's not a child. She's 25 years old. She made a choice. And now, she has to deal with the consequences." Another sigh. "You don't know how much this has hurt her," she said finally. I laughed. "Mom, do you know how much she's hurt me? Or does that not matter?" "Of course, it matters," she said quickly. "But she's struggling. Maybe if you just talk to her, you two could work this out." I pinched the bridge of my nose. They still didn't get it. They still thought this was fixable. They still thought I was going to be the bigger person, just like I always had. But this wasn't some petty argument. This wasn't about a wedding dress. This was about respect. And I finally understood that as long as I kept giving in, as long as I kept allowing them to push me around, they were never going to see me as an equal. So I made my decision. "I think it's best if we take a break," I said calmly. My mom stiffened. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, "that I'm done being the only one who's expected to make sacrifices for this family. If Mia wants to fix this, she can start by owning up to what she did. And until that happens, I don't want to talk to her." My mom's voice turned sharp. "Olivia, don't do this. You're going to regret, though." I hung up. Then, for the first time in my entire life, I blocked my parents. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But because I finally understood something I had spent my whole life avoiding. I deserved better. I deserved a family that respected me. I deserved relationships that weren't built on obligation and guilt. I deserved to be happy. And if that meant walking away from the people who refused to see me as more than a backup plan, then so be it. It's been 6 months since I got back from my trip. Mia never apologized. She never reached out. Instead, she doubled down, telling everyone who would listen that I was cold, LD, CR, and selfish. But I don't care. Because for the first time in years, I feel free. I took the honeymoon she didn't appreciate. I made incredible memories with my best friend. And, in a surprising twist, that friend and I are now dating. Turns out that while I was wasting my energy trying to be a good sister, I was completely missing the fact that the love of my life had been right in front of me the whole time. So, yeah, Mia lost a sister. But I gained a life. And honestly, I wouldn't trade that for anything.